You guys, it's the last week for instruction. It's week 8 and summer is about to start. Woo! So today we're going to have an instructional video on flash fiction, and then you will write your short story. So what is flash fiction? So flash fiction is a lot like a short story, but shorter. Flash fiction is a genre of fiction defined as a very short story. While there is no set word count that separates flash fiction from more traditional short stories, flash fiction stories can be as short as a few words, 6-word stories. While short stories typically run for several pages, flash fiction is also known as sudden fiction, short stories, micro fiction, or micro stories. So short stories go on for several pages. Flash fiction is usually a singular page. Let's continue. Three characteristics of flash fiction. Flash fiction stories share a number of common characteristics. So brevity. Flash fiction compresses an entire story into the space of a few paragraphs. There's no defined word count for flash fiction, but some commonly used word limits in flash fiction range from 6 words, as I mentioned in the previous slide, 6-word stories, on the short end, to around 1,000 words on the longer end, anywhere from 1,000 to maybe 1,500. If you're exceeding more than 1,500 words, then you're starting to move a little bit more into the short story category. So another characteristic of flash fiction would be there is a complete plot. A flash fiction story is indeed a story with a beginning, a clear beginning, a middle, and an end. And we're going to take a look at that in a minute. And then there's going to be some kind of surprise. Great flash fiction often incorporates surprise, usually in the form of a twist ending or an unexpected last line. This is not a gimmick. The aim is to prompt the reader to think deeply about the true meaning of the story. How to write flash fiction. Writing flash fiction can be an exercise in creative restraint, whether you intend your work for publication or just an exercise. Here's a quick guide on how to get started. So here's what's super important. Once I give you the instructions, I'm almost for certain that many of you are going to desire to write the 6-word story. But if you choose to do that, I suggest that you proceed with extreme caution. Because in order for the flash fiction 6-word story to work, you have to use a great deal of creative restraint. It's probably going to be the most difficult. So let's look at how to write it. 1, you use strong imagery, make every single word count, help your readers visualize as much as possible. So in this instance, this is when using very specific, very precise, descriptive word choice is paramount, is of the most importance when writing flash fiction. Every word counts. So when we overuse nouns and nondescript words, probably not going to write what you really, or convey, what you really want to say in that story. Next, stick to one moment, a singular moment in time. Focus on one particular moment in time. Don't try to cram in more than one scene into a piece of flash fiction. And lastly, work with just 1 or 2 characters. Don't spread your story too thin. If you find yourself needing more than 2 characters or 2 scenes, your story may be better suited in the short story format. Next, try first-person point of view. Now, I know that when you guys are writing essays, I usually say do not refer to yourself or insert yourself into your analysis, because that's a different type of writing. However, when it comes to short story writing, or in this case, flash fiction writing, it's entirely different. You're establishing a character. So you're not necessarily inserting yourself into the story any longer. So try first person point of view when writing flash fiction. This will create an instant connection to the reader and allow you to express more in fewer words. Surprise your reader. Make sure to end your story on a different emotional note than the one you started on. Creating surprise is what flash fiction is all about. Take the reader on a journey, no matter how short. Make good use of your title. So that means your short story, or in this case, flash fiction story, must have a title. I repeat, you must have a clever title. The title should be connected to your story, and in fact, it's an essential part of the story because it's going to reveal perhaps theme or bigger idea. So when you have so few words to work with, your title can pack a punch. Take a Joyce Carol Oates flash fiction story, Widow's First Year. The story reads simply, I kept myself alive. So let's look at it. The title is Widow's First Year. The story is I kept myself alive. You could unpack so much in just those few words. In fact, we could probably even do a Socratic seminar on just that alone. Because when we have that, we're going to bring with us all of our prior knowledge, all of the information that we know about marriage, all of the information that we know about death and loss and longing and loneliness. And then we're going to also bring with us all of the information that we know about survival. Hopefully you kind of get an idea of where we're going with this. Let's take a look at another example of flash fiction. And I know I'm giving you guys the 6-word examples, but that's only because of time. So here's another story. This flash fiction has been credited to Ernest Hemingway, I believe. However, I don't think we actually know who the author of this particular microfiction is attributed to. But for sale, baby shoes, never worn. So with this, we can come to so many conclusions. This is a story about a parent, perhaps a mother, who maybe is selling her baby's shoes because the child died and never had an opportunity to wear the shoes. In this, we have character who's clearly established, the mother. We can describe the mother. Perhaps the mother is depressed. We have conflict established and our assumption that the baby has died. And now she needs to get rid of the shoes that her child never wore. We can even go further and say we had a beginning. The beginning would be she was pregnant, she was excited, she was going to have a baby. The middle is the baby dies. The end, she now has to discard these shoes that her baby never wore. Hopefully that's clear to you guys. All right. Characters established. Conflict is established. And there is a plot, a beginning, middle, and end. So let's try it. So here are your directions for today's lessons. This would be lesson 1 and 2, because in all honesty, if you're going to write a really great flash fiction story, I need you to do some prep. And I didn't include this on the slide, but I first want you to stop and, after you choose your topic, I want you to develop it. You know what? Let's just go through the directions first. So choose one of the following topics and write a flash fiction story, and you'll find those topics at the very bottom. Your story must be no more than 500 words. And yes, I'll be able to determine whether or not you've written 500 words. 500 word limit. There is a cap. Please do not write 600 words or 700 words or 1,000 words because you just couldn't help yourself. Remember, we must be specific, intentional, and precise in our word choice. You're choosing words that will clearly convey your story, the meaning of your story, of what it is that you're trying to say to us. So you're going to choose one of the following topics, which are found at the bottom, and write a flash fiction story. Your story must be no more than 500 words and must include the following. 1. Characterization. Your character must be developed. 2. There has to be a clear beginning, middle, end. 3. I need you to attempt to incorporate figurative language in your flash fiction story. 4. There must be a theme. So I didn't talk about theme in that last example, but there is one. The message would be about love despite loss. How the love of a mother continues even despite hardship, even despite the loss of a child. A possible theme. Are there other themes in that 6-word story? Of course there are. However, whatever you write, you need to make certain that you have a message that you want us to leave with after we've finished reading your story. So the topics include finding love during a pandemic, unrequited love, surviving illness or loss, losing independence. So those are 4 topics. You will choose one. Choose one of those. Once you choose your topic, I do need you to make certain that you do some prep work before you just jump in there and start writing your story. Think about who your character is first and foremost, and what do you want their challenge to be. If it's love during a pandemic, well, what's the challenge? What is the conflict going to be? What will they need to overcome? Think of creative, figurative ways in which you can convey that. And then what do you want us to leave with concerning the struggle, or maybe even the delight in finding love during a pandemic? So there's one other thing I want you to consider. The role of destiny or fate. Place that in your place that inside of your, or try to incorporate that into your theme. The idea of destiny or fate. So I believe last week in the Do Now, you were to reflect on what that means, this idea of destiny and fate. And so you should be able to convey that, or think of clever ways in which you can incorporate that and that idea into your theme. Take your time. There's no rush. You have 1-2 days to write a 500-word story. In fact, it can be less than 500 words. It can be as few as 6. However, I warn you, if you're writing the 6-word story, it had better be real good. Alrighty then. That concludes the lesson for this week. Again, I want you to have fun. I want you to be creative. You will find the scoring guide in Google Classroom, and you will also, you'll find the scoring guide in Google Classroom, and all of the directions are also in Google Classroom. And if you go back to the beginning of no, that's fine. Forget it. I changed my mind. That's okay. So just make sure that everything that you need to support you is in Google Classroom, and I'll probably add a few other attachments I don't know, that might complicate things. So I was thinking I would add some additional attachments regarding characterization in terms of character types, but I think that might complicate things for you a little bit, so I don't want to do that. All right, so have fun writing.